You might have heard of a phone with the word Ultra in its name, with crazy specifications, the largest camera module and components we've seen in years, with 5G, lots of storage and battery. And yeah, I'm sure you also stopped in your tracks when you heard about that $1,400 price tag, which is a lot to ask for a phone. So what if you do want most of that power with some minor sacrifices, and in some cases even some things that go beyond it, and hopefully not have to pay so much money? This is the Oppo Find X2 Pro, one of the two successors to probably the coolest smartphone of 2018, and as of the time of this video, the closest competitor we've seen to the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra, but without all the size or the heft or the camera bump that we did not like. I promise you there will be a comparison as soon as this device gets its final software, as that's the only way to make the comparison fair. But for now, I've been using this phone for the last couple of days, so I think it's enough for me to begin with my review process. I'm Jaime Rivera with Pocketnow, and these are my first impressions of the Oppo Find X2 Pro. It's interesting how the Oppo Find line takes a hiatus every now and then. I mean, we saw the Oppo Find 7 and then we didn't see anything again until the Find X. And we've got to admit that regardless of how imperfect that phone was, they took motorized cameras to a whole new level, up to the point that it was probably my favorite design of 2018. That being said, I do believe that the Find X2 Pro is more like the Find 7, not bringing some crazy features, but instead being a more refined flagship that's able to lead the pack. The unboxing experience was actually a bit over the top. I mean, you'll definitely not be getting the same amount of detail in your retail packaging most likely. Inside of the care package, we have the device's box at the left and a clear case at the right. As we lift the device's box, we first are greeted by the typical literature that nobody is going to read, but remember, the SIM ejector tool is in here. Below that, we have the device and its typical protective layers, and below that, a pair of earbuds to USB-C in the same compartment that you'll find the USB-A to USB-C cable. And then there's the SuperVOOC charger that came in European fashion. I think that what's most striking about the Oppo Find X2 Pro is the design, but not for the typical, oh yeah, it feels great in the hand comment. It's more because of the fact that this phone actually has a ton of things crammed in here and doesn't really feel like a truck. So yeah, we've got this orange vegan leather finish in our unit, which, man, I wish every single phone would be made out of leather. Surely it might not age as well as the ceramic finish that others received, and especially if you get this phone wet, but honestly, I just love the fit and finish. The second thing that's striking is the display. This is a 6.7-inch Quad HD Plus OLED at 19.8:9 aspect ratio, a small punch hole at the corner, and with really vibrant color. I mean, it actually beats displays like the iPhone 11 Pro because it's 5 million to 1 contrast ratio versus 2 million. And then it beats the S20 Ultra in that it does do 120 Hz at Quad HD Plus instead of 1080p, and don't worry, there's also that 240 Hz touch sensing for those of you gamers out there. It supports HDR10+, and brightness goes between 800 to 1200 nits. The curved display is made of Gorilla Glass 6, and yes, we do have dual-firing stereo speakers in tow. The iPhone 11 lineup is where it started, cameras in. And I don't know if you join me, but I actually love the wallpapers that Oppo has shipped with this phone, which I did see on Reddit for those of you interested. Third is the internals. I mean, we're talking about the latest Qualcomm Snapdragon 865, regardless of your region. And then there are no tiers. It's all 12 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of UFS 3.0 non-expandable storage. We have Bluetooth 5.1, Wi-Fi 6, NFC also made the cut, which is not common on Oppo phones. And it also supports sub-6 5G, in addition to IP68 water and dust resistance. The battery is interesting because the spec sheet mentions 2 cells that total 4260 mAh, which is odd for a device that's a non-foldable. And as we saw in the box, this device does support SuperVOOC 2, which goes up to 65 watts, though it is not power delivery. Obviously, I can't give you the verdict on battery life just yet, but my first impressions have been good. This phone has ended the day just fine, and again, this is not final software. Fourth, I'd like to officially welcome ColorOS 7.1 into the list of Android UIs that I actually like. In the past, it tried really hard to mimic iOS, whereas now it's got its own identity, which is not really stock, but not a slow replacement either. You sadly won't get the Google feed at the left, but instead Oppo Smart Assistant, which we'll be testing to see just how smart it is. Things I like are, for example, the quick swipe from anywhere in the home screen to reach the search menu, and then there's the usual swipe from the top for notifications and control center, and then at the bottom for the app tray, which is, again, something welcome. I also like the fact that you can lock applications in RAM through the multitasking menu, which just gives the 12 gigs of RAM a purpose to exist. I haven't really run into bugs that I feel I should report on, but just keep in mind that again, this is not the final experience. We'll keep you posted on that on the full review. Fifth is what Oppo dubs its UltraVision camera system. Let me just throw some specifications at you. 48 megapixel standard, and this is Sony's latest IMX689, so the sensor is only slightly smaller than the 108 megapixel shooter on the S20 Ultra. Then we have a weird swap where the same large die of the 48 megapixel telephoto on the Ultra is actually what Oppo is implementing for the ultra-wide. Instead, Oppo decided to go for the smaller 13 megapixel shooter for the periscopic zoom lens, which does 10x hybrid and then goes up to 60x digital. And then the selfie shooter is of 32 megapixels at f2.4 with all the beauty modes that you will definitely want to disable. Now here's the thing, if you've watched my Oppo Reno 10X video from Japan, you'll know that I have a lot of admiration for how this company tunes a camera. They've been making miracles since the Snapdragon 600 series phones of years ago, so as expected, a better ISP only means better photos. I'm getting results I'd be expecting from a final product. Great color, contrast and detail, and dynamic range is actually far better than I expected. Even the viewfinder doesn't do this device justice at times. I like that the ultra-wide has little to no distortion, and the color is mostly matched when transitioning, though the more you zoom in, the more it varies if you noticed. Oh, and that 60x zoom is worthless, just don't use it at all. You'll probably just need it for stalking if you ever want to do that. But then features like night mode have evolved to work on various focal lengths, and I am seeing some very good results with the obvious limitations if you capture moving subjects, etc. Now, I really like the portrait photos from this phone. They're not overdone and they actually passed the Michael Fisher hair test, which is a big deal, at least for the most part. Selfies are good, though a tad soft for my taste, and even if dynamic range can be impressive in certain scenarios, selfie portraits can be the same, but the more subjects you add, the worse it gets. Now, sadly, one of my biggest disappointments with this phone is how video is underutilized. The chip is capable of 8K video, but the phone can't, and shooting in different focal lengths can be hit or miss. I mean, zooming in too much just completely kills stabilization. And then there's the fact that there's a complete lack of 4K selfie video, and this 1080p clearly has no stabilization, nor have I found options to enable it. And even though I know that might not be important to you, it is totally a deal breaker for me. To conclude, what can I say? I mean, the Oppo Find X2 Pro does make devices like the Galaxy S20 Ultra look bad in certain ways, but it also trails behind in features that even flagships of 2019 had already figured out. It's too early to say if this phone is going to be worth it. Obviously, we need final software. But I guess the biggest question is if this phone is going to be priced in a way where the compromises are worth the money. So far, I can tell you that I'm impressed by the fit and finish, by the specifications, and by most of the camera elements, but there are a few things that are deal breakers for me. Stay tuned for our full review, and while that happens, be sure to let us know in the comments down below what you'd like for us to test, in addition to which devices you'd like for us to compare this phone to. While you're at it, make sure you follow us on social media, subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. Also follow me on my personal handles to see me play around with this phone in the real world. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. I'm Jaime Rivera, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.